Sorry, is the questions going to the Q&A, not the chat? My mistake. Okay, I think that's it. I think we have fairly well got everyone here. Again, thank you very much for coming on to this NSSL and Huntress presentation, specifically designed for credit unions. With the environment that's evolving there, it's very important to keep people on top of changes and new systems and new features that are available for them in the area of regulation. So our agenda for today is we have a little bit about NSSL. There will be an element of Sasha coming in, Sasha to talk about Huntress. Himself and Huntress. We will then go into a very brief overview of what a SOC SIEM solution is, and then we'll hand over to Sasha to bring us through a presentation of the system and give us live action into how the system behaves and some war stories of incidents that have happened and how they've been managed by Huntress. So we jump straight into NSSL. I'm Paddy Hand, I'm the Service Director in NSSL. NSSL currently have 28 staff and increasing, and we're based in Cork, Dublin, Ennis, Dundalk, Sligo, Newbridge. So we have quite a wide presence around the country and are continuing to grow. We are dedicated to credit unions. We support around 100 credit unions throughout the country. We have a few sites in the UK as well. The credit union sector represents a significant portion of our customer base. We have a team that's committed to credit unions, that's highly involved in credit unions, and have a lot of experience. Some of the team members go back over 20 years in supporting credit unions. I'll then hand over to Sasha to give a description of himself.
Okay, brilliant. Hello, everyone. I am Sasha. I'm one of the sales engineers at Huntress. And, pretty much I get involved with anything technical at Huntress. I'm doing things like webinars like this, demonstrations. And, I don't want to talk about too much of Huntress just now because I do have some dedicated slides. But just a brief overview, Huntress is a managed security platform. Okay, we cover endpoints, identities, we cover security awareness training, and of course, the SIEM solution as well. It's managed, so it's backed by a 24/7 team. So day and night, if anything happens, we'll be able to detect and respond to those sorts of threats. But look, so much more to come. I'm going to show you the actual platform itself and some war stories. So I'm really excited to be able to do that. But yeah, I'll pass it back to Paddy. Okay,
thank you. So what we're looking at here is what's called Huntress is a SOC SIEM solution. And really, in the landscape that's changing, there's a continual emerging cyber threats. And on top of that, there's increased obligation to credit unions to minimizing their risks. NIS2 introduction, DORA coming at us, central bank thematic reviews, it's all leading towards operational resilience and having the robustness and monitoring and reporting to support your systems. In implementing a SOC SIEM solution, SOC is Security Operations Center and SIEM is System Incident and Event Management. The NSSL and Huntress platform provides actionable threat detection. So the system will provide information back to the SOC where action can be taken on threats in real time. It's a purpose-built platform. It's backed by a 24/7 AI-assisted Security Operations Center. So there is human-led investigation as well for continuous protection. Our platform helps credit unions not only adhere to the regulatory requirements, but also around your system log retention, which is important, and the reporting requirements. The SOC team are continually responding to alerts. They can step in and take action at 4 o'clock in the morning if an incident requires that. And it can be configured in a number of ways as to what action is taken and how far they will go to remediate or to stop any unwanted incidents happening. On top of that, we look at implementing Microsoft Defender. At this point, majority of customers are using Business Premium as the standard Microsoft license. And as part of that, you get a license for Microsoft Defender, which is an endpoint agent for managing malware on machine. Traditionally, credit unions have used Sophos, Microsoft Defender can replace Sophos. Huntress will work with Sophos or with Defender, but it gets a more in-depth logging mechanism coming from Defender. So we've decided to deploy that in conjunction with Huntress. And we're also looking at implementing Microsoft Intune device management, which again is the requirement coming at everybody that you have detailed, in-depth mobile device management. So that's what we see is happening with the Huntress solution. That's how it'll impact and help people, particularly in the area of operation resilience and compliance. The regulations coming are quite clear in this area of having the monitoring tools and having the logging information available in the event of an incident. So with that, I'll hand over to Sasha to go in and start showing us through the Huntress platform and how it will relate to yourselves.
All right, let me just share my screen. Paddy, just let me know when you see that.
Yes, that's up.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I do a lot of content out there. I do a lot of education. So if you're interested to learn more about Huntress, more about cybersecurity, you can absolutely follow me on LinkedIn. I'll put a post on there very shortly onto the chat of my LinkedIn. But let's get straight into it. Let's have some fun, as I like to call it. So on the agenda, at least on what I want to cover, I want to cover the managed security of Huntress. I want to show you what exactly we do, how we do it, and why we do it so well. And then I want to focus on the endpoint detection and response. That's the EDR with a little 5-minute demo. And then the identity threat detection and response, that covers your 365 identities, coupled up with a little demo as well. Talk about the managed SIEM, how powerful the SIEM solution is and the sort of benefits that it will be able to provide you, and to be able to actually detect attacks much more sooner. Some war stories, and then finally, what's next? What can you be able to do to have that conversation with Paddy? Now, what I did want to be able to show you is the current threat landscape with credit unions in 2025. And these are going to also leak in 2026 as well. So if we talk about the endpoints, right, your Microsoft devices, your Windows machines, for example, I'm seeing a lot of advanced malware evasion. I'm also seeing a lot of saved passwords on the machines, people not utilizing, let's say, for example, password managers, etc. Ransomware, we're seeing a lot of that in 2025. Of course, credit unions with their financial aspect as well, it is goldmine for them, for bad actors to be able to start looking into things like ransomware. And of course, alert fatigue. There are too many different devices, too many software solutions that people are using. It just generates too many logs. That's why people go to a 24/7 team, okay? Now, if we start talking about the identities on the right-hand side, credential theft, okay? People trying to gain initial access to your 365 environment happens all the time. MFA bypass, conditional access bypass. If you want to know how that works, I can absolutely send you a video. Backdoors, once they gain access to your environment, they want to stay within your environment as well. They do that with things like backdoors. And of course, alert fatigue. There are too many alerts generated by Microsoft by itself. We need someone to be able to manage that, to detect, to respond to those alerts 24/7. Now, I put something in, which is quite interesting, which is AI. Now, AI is a huge topic now in 2025, but the reason why I put this in is because I'm seeing a lot of attacks start or have AI included. Malware can be generated by AI nowadays, okay? Phishing emails, for example, they could send it out to 1,000 people. They could do that via AI now. What I'm saying is the threshold of hackers have dramatically reduced. You don't need to be smart now to hack. You could just utilize AI to be able to do the hard part for you. And then things like defensive AI evasion. Hackers can be able to create malware now that could bypass traditional antiviruses. In 2025, you should not be utilizing an antivirus by itself. Now, what can you be able to do to improve that? Include in your security systems behavioral analysis, which we'll go through today, monitoring, such as a SIEM solution, for example. We're also looking at things like credential token theft and other detections along that, ransomware, persistent footholds, and of course, education. Okay, I think there's a massive knowledge gap in today's industry, and webinars like this is going to be that one step forward in the right direction, and that's going to be education. So again, any questions in a Q&A chat, doesn't have to be always specifically to Huntress, just cybersecurity in general. More than happy to get that answered. But Huntress does have a 24/7 SOC team. We have 100+ people in our security team. That's a combination of people that are dealing with the SOC. Is also going to be our threat hunters, our tactical response team as well. So I always say in 2025, it's not difficult to find good technology. I'm sure there are fantastic technologies out there, but it's hard to find good people behind the technology. And that is where Huntress really does separate ourselves with other vendors out there. That not only do we have a kick-ass technology, but we have the right people behind the technology. And that's what helps us with our statistics of a mean time to respond of 8 minutes and a false positive rate of 0.7%. Incredibly powerful statistics with a human-led team. So let's talk about the solutions. I actually say these solutions help enable our SOC team because every solution is managed by that 24/7 team. So what's the first one? Protecting your endpoints with our EDR, endpoint detection and response. That covers Windows, Mac OS, Linux, okay? So all of those endpoints. And then what's probably just as important, if not more important than your endpoints, that's going to be your identities. We're focusing on Microsoft 365 and Google Workspace as well. And then education. I love it. My Google Home likes to talk to me after certain words. I said Google, and Google Home started talking back to me. Training your employees with our managed security awareness training. Okay, so making sure that people are educated on certain things that they're making sure they don't click on. Understanding what is ransomware, what is phishing, for example. So security awareness training is probably one of the most powerful tools you can use. Now, finally, the SIEM solution. It's very advanced, okay? But what we've loved to do is provide those enterprise-grade technologies and made it available for everybody, the SMB market, credit unions, for example. And a SIEM solution, which stands for Security Information and Event Management. Yes, absolutely, that is a mouthful, so we like to call it SIEM. And what do? We ingest logs from multiple angles, your networking devices, your Azure infrastructure, for example, identity and authentication, and of course, your Windows machines as well. So you saw there's a common word, and that is going to be managed. Yes, completely backed by a 24/7 team. You can't just purchase the technology. The team is incorporated into it as well. That's why this is so attractive. So let's focus on the endpoints first, okay? Endpoint detection and response. First of all, what's an EDR? I think I throw acronyms all the time, expecting people to, understand sometimes. People have never heard of EDR at times, which is perfectly fine. That's why I'm here. So an EDR is basically an antivirus on steroids, okay? As we know, an antivirus looks for the known threats out there because it relies on signatures. Now, what happens if it's never seen it before? The antivirus does not have a signature, so you'll probably allow it to go through or do some sort of sandboxing, okay? But by then, it's already too late at that stage. Now, also with things like AI, making new malware has never been easier. So that's where an EDR will look at the behavior of the machine. It's not looking at the known issues, for example, it's looking at the behavior. That Word document, why is it all of a sudden running a PowerShell script, for example? Okay. So it's picking up the things that the antivirus doesn't have the capability to be able to detect, or what the antivirus has missed as well. Now, Paddy mentioned things like Business Premium. You obviously unlock the capabilities for Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, which is a very advanced AV EDR that Microsoft has. Coupling that up with the Huntress EDR, you've got two very solid products working next to each other, where the logs from Microsoft can also go into Huntress for the SOC team, but also you have vendor diversity. Detections from Microsoft and Huntress. If one misses it, there's a very good chance that the next one can be able to pick it up, which would be Huntress at that stage. And this is what it looks like. The Huntress Managed EDR has many tiles, but I want to break this down. As I mentioned, we do ingest Microsoft Defender logs, whether that's the free antivirus or if that's the paid for version that you get with things like Business Premium, being Microsoft Defender for Endpoints. We can ingest those logs directly into our platform through our detections, ready for our SOC team to be able to interact, respond, close the ticket, but also close it within your Microsoft dashboard as well. So you're not needed to do two areas, okay? So the SOC team do all of that. But as Paddy said, we are AV agnostic. We're happy to work alongside any third-party antiviruses, but I do recommend the integration because there's sheer volume of logs that we can ingest. Now, of course, we have our own detections, things like malicious process behavior, ransomware canaries. So as I mentioned, behavior analysis is incredibly important in 2025. Malicious process behavior, that's like me sending Paddy a Word document, okay? All of a sudden, he clicks on that Word document. It runs a PowerShell script, so that same scenario I used, which is very common now. And then Paddy's none the wiser that something is just downloaded onto his machine in the back end. Everybody in this call will struggle to be able to see that because we're humans. But an EDR like Huntress knows the 10, the 12 things that a Word document can and should do. And if it steps out of those 10 or 12 things, it's no longer treated as a Word document. It's treated as malware. And if it was malware, that's where the human-led investigation team, okay? Bums on seats, hands on keyboards. We are going to triage, investigate. We are going to threat hunt. So yes, we will also look at your larger environment to see, is there anything else that could correlate with this particular thing we're seeing on this endpoint? Now, as I mentioned, okay, we really like to focus on the humans with Huntress because we see a lot of value with that. So hiring the right humans gives us, again, our mean time to respond of 8 minutes with our EDR, and a false positive rate of 0.7%. Those numbers are unheard of when we talk about a human-led team. Their job is to filter the noise, find out the differences between the false positives and the true positives, what's a real threat, and then respond. We can isolate the machine if we need to. We can delete the file, remove the malware. We can kill the process, for example. We can do all of those things in the meantime respond of 8 minutes, as I mentioned. And then finally, work with Paddy's team, NSSL, to be able to then provide this quality service for you. So then we'll work with Paddy's team, let him know what we found, what next steps, if there are any, and then take it from there. So this wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the benefit of course, Paddy's team here. Now, taking a step back, what you see in front of you, again, mean time to respond of 8 minutes. There's a lot that happens, as you can see. Now, what I want to do is show you a little demonstration of the platform. And here we are. This colorful, beautiful dashboard is the Huntress Command Center. That is the centralized location of the Huntress dashboard. All of our products merged into one colorful page. I can see my active incidents, critical, high, low. I can see my security operations center actions. And I really love talking about this one because it really does show the value that Huntress is providing. Huntress is not a noisy product. Okay, because the SOC team are incorporated into the solution. So if I give you an example over here, the events analyzed, that's kind of like your haystack. Your signals investigated, those are the needles within the haystack that we've poured. We started investigating, analyzing it. And then you've got your incidents reported. Those are kind of like the broken, sharp needles that could cut or harm you. And we then needed to provide you some information about that, hey, we found this. This is a threat. This is what we've done. You don't need to do anything else, okay? And that's a 24/7 thing that we're doing. And of course, as I mentioned, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, we have that integration available. It comes with your EDR, okay? Now, let's actually show you what an incident looks like. Now, if I go into the last one over here, if I view that report, this is what a report will look like, okay? So a report would give you kind of like an overview of what to expect, what we've actually detected. Now, what I love about our reports is that, yes, it's technical, but we explain absolutely everything that's happening. So here is a COFTA, you know, somebody who's technical might be like, oh yeah, I know what COFTA is, but we appreciate not everyone is technical. Could be a managing director reading this. We explain what a COFTA is. It's a fileless piece of malware. It normally downloads things like ransomware. It normally provides hackers remote access to the computer. So not only is this informative, it's educational as well. We provide the process insights. We provide the remediation instructions as to what needs to be done to remove this threat. And then also the footholds, how the bad actor got in, the processes that they affected. And then also, do you need to reach out to support? Do you need to have a live chat? Now, Paddy, I know you had some experiences with live chats, callbacks, etc. Do you want to share that with the team?
I will. So again, what we did in NSSL in our early days with Huntress, we put a malware on an isolated machine on our system just to monitor the process and see what happened. So once the machine came live and visible to Huntress, the SOC team immediately started sending alerts and warnings. So you're getting an ongoing commentary as to what's happening. And at any point in the middle of it, you can, instead of waiting for a commentary, you can start a chat, Or in my case, I tend to like to talk to people. So rather than starting a chat, you can request a callback. So we requested a callback, and I'd say within 20, 25 seconds, the phone rang, and it was the Huntress investigator on discussing what they were doing, what they were finding, how they were dealing with it, anything we needed to do. And that continued throughout the whole process until it was ultimately closed about an hour after it started, with all remediations in place. So it was very much a real world example. What I liked about it was at any point of the process, you can just reach out and say, please call me to discuss this. And I found that very, very involving.
Yeah, that's humans behind the technology. Again, it's great having the right technology, but not having the right people behind the technology really does compromise the overall service. So, Paddy, really appreciate that. So we've got some remediation plans. What needs to be done? Now, this is a demo environment, but in a real life scenario, Huntress would have already pushed this down for you. Okay. But the reason why I'm showing you the step-by-steps, because I want to show you what Huntress can do. We can delete all these actions, registry values, deleting the files, for example. And then we'll work with Paddy's team as to, are we ready to reboot this machine? Okay, because of course, we don't want to take a server offline if it isn't absolutely necessary. We'll speak to Paddy's team for that. Okay, so there's a good communication, good partnership. We are an extension of NSSL's team, good partnership there to be able to provide this service for you. Now, you would understand, acknowledge it, you'll approve it, but we could also reject. Now, talking about rejection in an incident probably isn't the most sexiest thing, but I disagree with Huntress. Huntress, if you reject a ticket, it actually opens up a SOC investigation on what you rejected, because we know humans can make mistakes. Now, if someone's rejected this as, oh, we're doing pen testing on that endpoint, perfectly fine. It opens up a SOC review. So you'll see that on the ticket. We will double check what you've rejected. And if we see something like that's related to ransomware on a pen testing audit, we'll be like, well, that's not normal pen testing. Can you please let us know what machines they can do that testing on and what they can do on that test as well? And you would be shocked. More than I would like to admit, I'm seeing a lot of people getting re-escalated tickets from the SOC team saying that we don't believe this is pen testing. We believe this is real malware. And wouldn't you know, apparently it wasn't even on the same machine that the pen test was happening. Again, human error. It happens. We know. We're here to make sure that we support you with that as well. So a couple of things before we move on to the identity side of it, okay? If I go down to the EDR, external recon, okay, we know if you've got any ports open that hackers could be able to abuse. We can be able to see all of this. Our SOC team can see it. We will let you know, okay? We'll provide an incident report if needed as well, if something's being abused. So I just want to show you the amount of granularity that we have within your environment that the SOC team are continuously monitoring for, okay? Now, let me take a pause over here. Let's go back into the actual platform, the actual slide deck, and let's talk about ITDR, Identity Threat Detection and Response. Me being a security professional, doing this for a number of years, continuously, I'm getting more nervous with identities. Endpoints, yes, they are a target, absolutely, okay? But if I was a hacker, I could probably do more damage with a compromised identity compared to a compromised device. Why? I'm going to use Paddy as an example because he's a very, very known man, okay? He knows a lot of credit unions, okay? Now, let's say a CEO of a credit union, for example, obviously they would have a lot of contacts. If I compromised that CEO's identity of that credit union, I could be able to find out exactly who that person has been communicating with for the past 7 days, what relationships they have. And if I spoof the email or use that exact email because I've compromised his account to start sending malware to that other company, do you feel like that person will trust the email? Of course they would do, because they know the person is coming from the exact same email saying, hey, Simon, could you just download this file? This is really cool. This is actually part of our, our new idea that we're doing here at the credit union, for example, whatever it may be, something convincing, okay? The sheer amount of spread that I can do through the identity outperforms what I could do with an endpoint, okay? So managing directors, finance directors, for example, even just general receptionists are all vulnerable for hackers to be able to steal their identities and start spreading malware or malice across the entire, not only infrastructure of that organization, but other organizations as well. If we use M&S as an example, they did social engineering, the hackers, okay? They also sent out emails to IT departments and other organizations as well. So the trickle down of being able to take from one identity ended up actually abusing the entire organization. So what do we need to do? What sort of gaps are we seeing with identities? We're seeing a lot of MFA bypassing, okay? I mean, 5 years ago, maybe, for example, MFA was that golden bullet. Hey, I've got MFA. I don't need to be worried about a bad actor gaining access to my, my 365 environment. They could probably guess my username and password, but I've always got MFA. Well, guess what? I can bypass MFA. I can show you how easy that is. I'll pass you a YouTube video. Conditional access, basic conditional access policies, static rules, for example, that only users who can log in from Ireland or the United Kingdom can be able to log into 365. Well, guess what? That could be bypassed as well in 2025. It's quite scary. It's actually quite easy as well. And then relying on only email security is simply not enough, because that is not a detect or respond tool. Well, guess what? Maybe if that email security vendor can detect something, you also need it to respond. I need it to isolate the identity if needed. So there is a little demo that I wanted to showcase. Just before I do that, actually, just make sure. There we go. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. Now, if we go into the platform, and if I cover the ITDR, okay, if I go into the dashboard over here, scrolling down, I've got all these different signals. So what can we be able to detect with ITDR? I could detect things like session hijacking, okay? That's when somebody tries to steal your token to get access to your 365 environment, okay? Here's one, token theft. We can see if the login has a mismatched tunnel, browser, operating system, okay? I can also be able to see if there are any inbox rules that are being created when the bad actor gain access to your 365 environment. I can also see if there's any malicious applications that have been detected. So all of these different detections that we have are split into two. Initial access, where bad actors are trying to gain access to your 365 environment, and also persistence, where they're trying to stay within your environment for as long as possible and create backdoors. All of that sends signals to the SOC team. And it's the exact same slide as I provided you before. The human-led SOC team, they will review absolutely everything. They will detect, respond. They will work with Paddy's team to be able to provide that quality service to you. But what's also important is, again, how we respond. So we are responding by isolating the identity. So here's one identity. We can isolate the identity at any time. If we see a compromised user, if they see you gain access to your 365 environment, 24/7, we can revoke and disable that identity. And we know a lot about that identity. We have a baseline. We know where they should be logging in from, the VPN usage, what VPNs are they using, what browsers are they using as well. And the great thing about this is that you can have business basic, you can have E5, you get the same detections throughout, because we're not leveraging Microsoft's detections here. These are Huntress's detections, okay? So that allows you to be able to maintain what you currently have now and to be able to utilize the ITDR and have the same amount of protection and detection capabilities. We also know where the user should be logging in from, okay? And that's very important, because as soon as, let's say, someone is based in Ireland, all of a sudden they log into Portugal, we know that is suspicious. That is then something we can be able to start investigating, okay? And then we can start creating rules, for example, where the user should be logging in from. And all these logs are stored within the SIEM solution for you, free of charge for 1 year. Microsoft may hold logs, I don't know, Paddy, is it 30 days, 90 days maximum?
Between 30 and 90 days, depending on the license.
That's not enough. What happens if there was a breach that you need to backtrack on? Huntress will hold those logs for you for 1 year, okay? All within the SIEM solution. I can also have a visual map of where my users are logging in from. How often are they logging in from there, for example? Do I want to create a rule for the United States that I don't want anyone logging in from the United States, for example? Or do I always want to make sure but I want to create a rule that blocks, let's say, for the organization, I want to block it for Iran, maybe, okay? And for the users that have conditional access, this is really important, okay? Because as I mentioned, conditional access can be bypassed. It's pre-authentication. Huntress unwanted access is post-authentication. So if you put everything as a block besides the countries that you want, you've now got 2 layers of protection, conditional access and Huntress, because that means if someone has been someone triggered an unauthorized rule, they would automatically be isolated, and then you know they bypass conditional access, because unwanted access or Huntress is always post-authentication. So again, you're adding another layer. This is so important in 2025. Same thing for VPNs as well. Microsoft doesn't actually track VPNs, but Huntress can. We can be able to make sure that we block everything besides those 1 or 2 VPNs that you want to use. All right. Now, I just want to show you a report. Now, this is something that you can get access to at the end of the month. You're going to have your organization name over here. We're going to give you an overview of what we found. Okay. A summary of how much we've analyzed. Also, the things like the detections, what we've detected, what we've actually reported, for example, and then that kind of needle in a haystack analogy I like to use, the events analyzed, the signals detected, and then the incidents reported. But just, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. This is the demo environment, which is why you see no signals investigated, 1 report. It's just me messing around with my demo environment. The entities as well, what we protected. So that's great for an audit. And then your analyst notes, okay? Talking about the persistence, talking about the ransomware canaries, all of these different functions that we have with the manager ITDR, and also all the logs that are stored within the SIEM as well. You know what? There is something I would love to show you while I'm here. This is something which I'm just thinking of now, and that is the sample report of the ITDR. Now, this is a new function. Okay, I'm just gonna pause this, put this over here. Okay, Huntress, as of a couple of weeks ago, when you map your ITDR into Huntress, we will do an audit of your environment. We would look for any rogue applications, inbox rules, unwanted access, prehistorically of when you had Huntress installed. Now that is so important because that's an audit of your environment. That allows us to be able to detect if there are any bad actors already within your environment. And this is something you get 24 hours after initially mapping the 365 tenant. So I would actually invite, if anyone is interested, okay, and Paddy is obviously, you know, emphasizing how important this is, for example, we would also do an audit of your environment. So we'll not only apply the detections from here on there, but we're going to look prehistorically as well. So it's so important, get it mapped as soon as possible. You can be able to see things like the identity landscape. What identities are we pulling? Unwanted access, okay? And what I love about this report, we explain absolutely everything. Provide it to the managing directors, whoever it is, we explain everything here. Shadow workflows, such as the inbox rules that we see bad actors creating, and of course, the rogue applications. All of this is something that will be provided when you spin up the first time, okay? And that's something that Paddy can work with you.
Yeah.
So let me move on to back into, let's move that back into the slide deck and talk about the SIEM solution. This is great as well. So this is the exact same analogy that I was mentioning. What we detect, everything over here, session hijacking, inbox rules, rogue applications, the human-led investigation remains the same. And I just want to mention, you thought 8 minutes may be fast. Well, the ITDR is 3 minutes mean time to respond. Okay, incredibly rapid. Communication remains the same. Remediation, of course, is focusing on that specific identity. I did want to focus on the demo portion, but this is a good kind of like refresher on exactly what we just covered. Now, if we start talking about the SIEM solution, okay, this is one of my favorites. The SIEM is ingesting absolutely everything, your Windows machines, network devices, identity and authentication. We can store all of those logs in. We store it for 1 year or 7 years, whichever you prefer. We will filter out the things that are not necessary, only keep it relevant to security. Everything we have detections for, we will be subject for threat hunting and detections. So all of that would be going through our own detections with our SOC team actively and proactively, which is important, threat hunting as well. We will respond to any incidents. We will work with Paddy's team if we find anything, okay? And I'm going to show you some real life examples as well. And then with a compliance net, because of how we're storing it, how long we're storing it, that allows you to be able to maintain compliance with things, of course, like credit unions as to what they need, DORA example, okay? So if you need any sort of understanding as to how that works, please let us know. We'll be more than happy to help you with that.
Yeah.
Now, what can we ingest? That's very important, okay? There's a lot of firewall vendors over here. I think Paddy's already told me the main ones that you guys use. So I think we're very, very good with that. Now, just want to mention, if there is anything outside of this that you still want to ingest, do not forget, we do have a general syslog collection that we can be able to also pull in case that there's no parsers built for that as well, okay? We are also pulling in, as I mentioned, ITDR, EDR. We're also putting identity authentication, and Azure is actually open. Although it says coming soon, it is open. So we can be able to onboard you with that as well. And this is the last slide that I have with the SIEM, talking about what happens if you have EDR only compared to EDR with SIEM. EDR only, as I mentioned, is kind of like your last line of defense, right? If somebody gets to your machine, really, although it can be stopped, it's too late. Why did it manage to get onto your machine at the first place, right? So we talk about defense in depth, having multiple layers to be able to stop bad actors gaining access to your environment. So EDR only, it can detect, it can respond, it is incredibly powerful. But as you can see, it's when the actual threat is on the machine. It shouldn't be getting to that level, in my opinion. SIEM and EDR, you can see that it's now, the red has dramatically reduced to green because we are able to detect things much more sooner before it actually gets to the endpoints. And in cybersecurity, minutes do matter, okay? The fact that we can now detect things from a SIEM aspect allows us to be able to have more time to respond, be more strategic, for example, and not be disruptive to the end users, for example. Let's say if this was ransomware and it managed to get to the endpoint, for example, we would probably have to take that endpoint offline. So someone's being disrupted. Whereas the SIEM, we could be able to pick it up before it hits the endpoint, okay? Or have a very good chance of doing so. That's why it's so important. That is why it's so attractive for a lot of people out there. So 3 more slides and then I'm done. War stories, okay? These are the successful events that we've had at Huntress, protecting our partners and our end customers. This is focusing on the endpoints. And we found an unauthorized remote access. Basically, on the machine, we know there's a normal RMM that's used, okay? Because we've got a baseline, we understand what's normally happening on this machine. All of a sudden, there was another RMM installed, okay? Why? That triggered some interest to the SOC team. We didn't actually respond there because that could be genuine. But what we actually saw is another RMM being deployed using general credentials, okay, admin, for example. Already that was suspicious for us. And then we saw network configuration changes. The Huntress team was like, no, that is a normal thing that a bad actor would do. And we actually ended up isolating it. No, forgive me, take a step back. We actually just removed the RMM. We didn't even need to isolate it, okay, if I remember correctly on this incident. We removed the malware. We actually made sure that the end user was informed about this as well. Working with Paddy's team, we would have informed them as a first cause. Removed the malware, killed the process, and booted out the bad actor. And we would advise that a reboot would happen to clear any cache, for example. Again, mean time to respond of 8 minutes. We know what's normal in your environments. As soon as something becomes abnormal, it generates interest. And what I love being part of the Huntress team is that I get to see all of these events. Okay, so with that RMM incident, there was a virtual war room that happens at Huntress. My team, the engineering team, gets involved, the SOC team, the threat hunters, we all get involved in one call and try to hash out exactly what's happened. Provide that in an incident report, pass it back to the partner. Now, this is a very good example. This is related to ITDR, the identity side of things. When a bad actor gains access to your 365 environment, that's already one problem. But as I mentioned, they want to try and stay within your environment. That's another problem, a larger problem, in my opinion. They utilize applications. And how do they do that? They download applications within your environments, which are safe to use if it was genuinely used for good purposes. And, rogue applications is a very good example I have. Is imagine a crowbar, Okay, it's a legitimate builder's tool, or hammer. It's a legitimate builder's tool, but there's nothing stopping somebody picking up that hammer, smashing a car window, grabbing that person, running away. Or you can have a builder that will build a house. It really does depend on who uses that application. They can be able to take advantage of the application and use it for malice, because these applications typically have very advanced permissions. We saw the application, we revoked access of the user, and we removed the application as well. Again, meantime responder 3 minutes. We would have worked with our partner, which in this case would have been Paddy's team. Okay. And then finally, the last one, which is related to the SIEM solution, is a brute force attack. Now, for anyone who does not know what a brute force attack is, it's basically a bad actor trying to get authenticated into a server or a machine. They're trying all the usernames and passwords. They're trying their best to gain access, guessing all these different usernames and passwords, seeing which one fails, and just waiting for that one successful one to gain access to it. We know if there are multiple failed login attempts. Okay, we know what's abnormal. 3 failed login attempts, probably nothing too concerning at that stage. Hundreds of failed login attempts within seconds, well, that's a brute force attack. Okay, that's a bad actor somewhere on the other side of the world trying to ping or trying to connect to that server, but failing continuously. We saw that. We actually ended up isolating the server to stop the bad actor gaining access to that server. We informed the MSP, the partner. We informed them on what particular IP that bad actor was using, what firewall we saw it come through, what VPN they were using, and we provide them best practice next steps as they need to block the IP, close this port, create this rule on the firewall, for example. But don't worry about the server, we've handled it already. Okay, and that's the partnership that we're working for. We are an extension of NSSL's team. It is incredibly important to have a 24/7 element, because bad actors, they're not going to do it in the middle of the day. They will most likely do it when there's less eyes on the environment. And having that 24/7 SOC team there is that there's always going to be eyes within the environment. So realistically, it's your move, okay? I've been in situations where people were too late, and then we're like, hey, you know, can we be able to do something now? Absolutely, but I should have never gone to that stage in the first place. Please work with Paddy's team. He'll be more than happy to help you. That is my LinkedIn. Please scan it. Please follow me. I'll be more than happy to, you know, work with anyone that needs any help, for example. But Paddy, I'll hand it back to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Sasha, for that very comprehensive overview of what Huntress does. We've had a few questions in. As an example, we've had someone asking, in the event of an incident, who will Huntress contact? Is it NSSL or the credit union? That is all configured as part of the installation. By default, you know, the credit union can be contacted. It can be configured that, say, an ITDR breach or an identity is compromised. Do Huntress step in and lock out the account immediately, or do they advise NSSL or the customer what account is compromised and ask what to do next? So again, depending on the severity of the incident, we will have built-in rules on the setup of the system as to what takes place. So if it looks like an identity is compromised, the normal recommendation is that Huntress will block that account immediately and advise customer and NSSL what has happened and why it was done. So it is totally definable. Other questions we've had coming in is like how long it takes from an incident being raised to action taken. But again, Sasha covered that as part of the discussion. And again, the report's available after the incident. We saw an example of what goes onto a report. So again, and that is available in the portal when view post-incident, what happened, what action was taken, any communication that happened as part of the process is all recorded there. And also the monthly report is critically important. As we all know now, it's having the monthly reports, having the evidence for compliance, that when the questions are asked, you have the evidence to produce. And that is all part of the monthly report that you get as part of your stack, that you know each month what has happened, and any incidents that happened are detailed in the report with full backup available in the portal for detail of the incidents down to line level, what actions were taken and what was found. That's covered the questions we've got in so far. So that is about it, unless anybody has any more questions to put in. I'd like to thank you all for your attendance and I hope you found it useful. Please feel free, reach out to Phil, any of the account managers, Phil, Scott, Peter or Paul or myself We have put a lot of information out about Huntress, so we are ready to engage with everybody, and we do think is a critical part of the arsenal moving forward. This kind of solution, as we said on the outset, Huntress is designed to bring this to the small to medium entity. Traditionally, this has been enterprise level, very large organizational level type technology. In the last couple of years, it has moved into the space of the size of credit unions. So it is important that these technologies are there. They need to be implemented. They give you the reporting, the oversight, the visibility of the network, the expectation that's needed with compliance now. So again, thank you all very much, and thank you, Sasha, for giving us the time. I think it was a very good presentation, and thank you for that.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.